Hey, so it's been a hot minute since I've been on here, and I thought I would take a minute and let you know some things that have been going on, some things that have moved through that I think are really relevant in light of some of the conversations I have had as I'm starting to re-engage and jump back into things. For those of you that don't know, I actually took a sabbatical for most of this summer. It's interesting. It started out as a 9-day excursion, getting off the grid, going dark, heading out to Denver to see some friends, spending some time in the mountains. This time, for some reason, I was really craving some of that very healthy masculine energy, which the mountains always provide for me. They're the space that I get to ground. They're a space where I can kind of tune in and sort of get into my core. Most of the time when I want some time off the grid, it's usually by the water. As a Cancer and someone who is a water baby, I tend to really like that soft feminine energy. However, this time the mountains were calling. And it was interesting because this wasn't a sabbatical that I had planned to take. In fact, if you would have told me earlier this year, hey, Candy, you're going to take a sabbatical for, 2 months, I would have told you that you had lost your mind and that you were batshit crazy, because things in my business were sort of stuck. I was feeling that energy of I got to make things happen. I got to get things going. I need to find some more expansive ways to get my message out. And so, as those moments of resistance show up always, as lessons and teachers, this one was no different. And what was interesting was earlier this year, I had an opportunity to partner with another entity. And I guess you would say collaborate. And so in my mind, when this was a yes, and it was a yes at the beginning of the year, it was a space that was this resounding yes that said, there's a system I can tap into. There's a way that I can serve my clients, my community, my audiences more. And I can tap into a system that's already out there, that's proven, that just gives me a different way to support people. And it really felt clean. It really felt congruent. It really felt aligned with where I was at. And it was what I would say was it was a yes. It was a resounding yes. It had taken me some time to get there. I'd had conversations with this organization for some time, and it hadn't been a yes until it was. And so, I fully engaged, fully committed myself into the process. And somewhere along the lines, after about 4 months in, I started to feel this energy that, to be honest, I really haven't felt since my corporate days. And if you don't know, I left corporate almost a decade ago now, and really had some pivotal rock bottom moments in that environment. And so it is one of the reasons why I stepped out to do what I'm doing now, was because I hit the ultimate level of burnout in my corporate career. In fact, for those of you that don't know the story, I'll share that with you for just a moment. I was about 35 years old. I was working for a large Fortune 100 company at the time. And I was hustling. I was hustling on a level that I, even looking back now, I'm not sure how I even did that or how that was sustainable, but I was literally putting in 80 to 100 hours a week. I was traveling. I would travel sometimes and get to a city. I can remember flying into Salt Lake City, and I had a meeting with a hospital the next morning. And I remember when I got into the hotel, because I would sometimes have people just kind of ushering me around. I got to the hotel and I remembered asking the woman behind the counter, I said, where am I at? What time zone? And do you have a reservation for me? I didn't even know where I was. And so what had happened was, somewhere throughout that process, I had manifested this pain in my chest, like this really just fucking painful pain in my chest. And it was this thing that started to really create kind of this debilitating space for me. And I was moving. And so the more the pain hit, the more I just was like, I don't have time for this right now. I don't have time. I got to power through. I got to power through. Right. And it got to the point where it physically had me hunched over, to the point where I had to go to the hospital. I couldn't even stand upright. And every time I took a deep breath, it hurt. And it was in my chest. And so, I did what any educated, smart, intelligent woman would do, or person would do in that circumstance. I jumped online. I checked out WebMD.com, and I started to self-diagnose myself, which, by the way, anyone that's ever gone out to that site, you know that that's just like doom and gloom. And like the whole point of that is to like freak the shit out of you. So you go out and it doesn't matter what you put on there. I mean, you can be putting, you stubbed your toe, you broke a fingernail, you did whatever. If you scroll far enough down on the symptoms and the list of what that could mean, inevitably you're going to see like 3 different words: cancer, death, or heart attack, or all 3. And so, of course, I'm saying I have a pain in my chest, and like the worst of the worst of the worst is showing up. So I see words like heart attack and dying and whatever else showed up. And of course, when you're already having this pain in your chest and can't breathe, you start to self-diagnose on a site like that, and it just, the wheels start coming off a little bit, right? You're like, holy shit, I'm dying, I'm having a heart attack, I'm 35 years old, blah, blah, blah. Needless to say, I finally took my ass to the doctor. And I can remember sitting in the waiting room. I didn't even go to emergency. I just sat in the waiting room, right? Because I could get work done while I was waiting. The nonsense that we feed ourselves is just absolutely ridiculous. And what I was so convinced I had to do, you know, the whole game that you have to play in order to create this thing called success, right? So anyway, I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and it occurred to me, all of a sudden I had this really haunting, this really like, oh shit moment. Actually, it was probably more like an oh fuck moment, because I immediately, the question that walked in my head, came through my head was, forget having a heart attack for a minute. He's going to ask you, your doctor's going to ask you, why do you think you're having a heart attack? And I immediately remember the question that popped in, or the thought that popped into my head in that moment. And the thought was, Candy, when's the last time you had a quality night's sleep? And I don't mean passed out because you were working all hours of the night and you fell asleep on your laptop. I was known to do that a few times. Or passed out because you were just so exhausted that you literally crawled to bed and, like, I don't know, got a couple hours, 3 or 4, got back up and started the grind again, right? Or passed out because God knows, you know, did I put down 5, was it 6 martinis the other night with the guys because I needed to take the edge off? Or maybe it was, you know, the bottle or 2 of wine that I had to, again, take that edge off. And, you know, all of these things were rolling through my head. And of course, when that happened, the wheels really did come off, because I started to go, oh my God, or is he going to ask me about the fact that I binged ate, and the fact that I think I put down a large pizza the other night, and then I got really pissed, and then I went to the gym and I worked out for 3 hours. And I think, you know, I was working out so hard the last 3 weeks that they wouldn't even let me check into the gym, because they're like, Candy, we can't in good conscience. You've been here 3 hours a night. You're killing yourself. We haven't seen you take a break. We are not going to check you in. Or was it the, you know, bag of clothes? I think I went to Ann Taylor at the time, and there was like $500 of clothes I spent, and it's sitting in the hallway. I didn't even know what it was, right? Like all these different things that just like came down to the fact that, you know, I had binged ate, and then I went to the gym, and then that wasn't working. And so then I took fat burners. And when the first fat burner didn't work, I stacked another one on it. And I used to yo-yo, like my weight would go from like size 6 to like 18 in a 6-month period. I would just go up and I would go down, and it would just be depending on what I was using to take the edge off and how pissed I would get at myself, because I would let myself fall into these habits and these patterns. Needless to say, my adrenals were fried. My nervous system was like inside out, and I was just a fucking hot mess. So I'm sitting in the doctor's office and I'm having a complete meltdown. I mean, I'm pretty much in the fetal position on the floor by the time they call me in to talk to the doctor. Well, what ended up turning out to be a battery of tests. I literally went through everything. I remember having my first colonoscopy, my first endoscopy. I remember having CT scans and MRIs. We were trying to figure out where this mass was and what it was, because the good news was it wasn't a heart attack. The bad news is we couldn't figure out why I had a mass in my chest. Well, it came full circle, and the doctor's like, you know, good news, you're not having a heart attack. And I was like, yes. And he's like, sit down. And he's like, we need to talk about what's going on. And what had happened was I had actually manifested a mass in my chest, a mass that tripped a sliding hiatal hernia I didn't even know I had. Comes to find out that something in my family, whatever. Didn't know this, because why would I? I've never had these symptoms before. But what's interesting is I manifested this mass. And the reason I say that is because I want you to think about when the stress hits, when the overwhelm, when you're getting through one of the 3 phases of what I like to say, you know, there's 3 phases of burnout. There's burnout, there's the fumes, and then there's the black abyss. And many of you actually probably, if you're like me, you probably know the 31 flavors of burnout, where, you know, it's a whole spectrum and a whole plethora of like offerings when it comes to the kinds of burnout you've been through, the ways you've taken the edge off, and the things that you've done. What we don't realize is that our body physiologically responds to that. I've done so much in studying the neurology of this, the physiology of this, your nervous system, your adrenals, what happens. Stress is such a culprit. And I would offer, most of the research shows that the symptoms, the ailments, the diseases, the things that show up for us are a function of what we think about. They're a function of what we hold on to for anxiety and stress, and they're a function of the things we keep holding in. And I say that because think about what happens when the stress hits, right? When the shit hits the fan, when the overwhelm, the anxiety, the stuff, the fear kicks in, we usually do one of two things. When fear shows up, when something that triggers us, when something that feels uncomfortable shows up, we either hold our breath, so we're like, and we hold it all in our body, and we hold it right here, and we contract. We bring it into the space where we just like, and close it down. We're going to like protect ourselves, fight, flight, freeze, right? The other thing we do is sort of what I call the above the neck, shallow breathing, the whole in your head where you're like, right? Like you're almost taking those high hyperventilating type breaths because you're like, okay, I can't, the energy is moving so fast, I can't allow myself through it. What we're not taught, even that makes me a little dizzy doing that, because I don't do that anymore. You wonder what our body responds to, right? Just doing that hyperventilating breathing or holding your breath actually creates this space where my head just feels really lightheaded. So I want you to like notice that, because that's that contracted, very shallow way that we're breathing, and we're holding on to that energy. And so what happens is that energy has nowhere to go, and it starts to ricochet around in your body. And so for me, it ricocheted into a space where the more I was holding my breath, the more that I was doing that, it manifested this actual mass in my chest. Now, fast forward, 14, 15 years later, there's no mass. My sliding hiatal hernia, nothing. Because once I realized where the source was, where the root of this stress was coming from and what was happening in my body, I changed my life. And so this is relevant to what just happened this past summer, when I realized that space, that feeling, that overwhelm, that 31 layers and the 3 levels of burnout that I've experienced. And I know that all too well. I know what rock bottom feels like. I've been there a few times. Now, that being said, it was time to do some deep inventory and really look at, I got to be honest with myself. I got to have an honest conversation around what I'm doing. And I used to remember my mom used to joke, and she did this more because of the way I played sports, which was all, boom, boom, boom. It was wind and grind, burn and churn. But I do the same, or did the same in my business, in my corporate career, that she's like, Candy, you're going to be in the grave by 40 if you don't knock it off. And I think about how much that actually played into far beyond the soccer I played and the sports I played, and the way that I worked out at the gym, and what I did in my body, and all of my knee surgeries and, Achilles surgeries, and all the things that happened, by the way, again, all symptoms of the shit that I was holding onto in my body. And if you haven't ever read, Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap, he talks about our upper limits. And our upper limits can show up oftentimes in the way that our body physiologically responds to the bullshit we keep telling it. I can only do this much. I can only be this successful. I can only be this happy. I can only whatever. And it comes back down to this whole not being enough, which is a complete bullshit story that I have been truthfully, for a good part of my life, struggling with, and for the last couple of years really been facing kind of eyeball to eyeball and getting in front of, to say, okay, I see you, I understand this, and I want to understand the root of this so that I can start to embrace the idea that I am just because. You are just because. When you think about this idea that we've got to prove something, we've got to validate something, which was my whole corporate career. And truthfully, it's been the better half of 40 some odd years with the relationship I have with my dad, with all kinds of different things. It's always been in the space of, I got to fucking prove I'm enough. I got to fucking prove that someone else can validate whether or not I bring value. And let me tell you, that is just a slippery slope into hell. And let's just be clear, it's a hell that either your body will create for you, because your body is just a mirror, just a response. It's your best friend. It is showing you the truth always. And mine has kicked my ass many times. So needless to say, this showed up 15 years ago. fast forward to this past summer, and you all know we've been through some shit over the last 2.5 years, the pandemic, everything that's imploding. And when you look at it from the just the day to day, sometimes it can be heavy. When you look at it from the gift that we're actually getting, we're moving out of this whole energy of this kind of systemic, heavy, darker energy that is imploding. Every system we've seen, it's all imploding, it's all going away, which is opening up this space where we can start to intuitively learn who we are and get aligned as fuck in our own design and our own sense of being and our own truth. And as that keeps showing up for me, I got my ass kicked again this summer. And so I had taken on this partnership to kind of come full circle. I'd taken on this partnership that while it was a yes in the beginning, it started to very quickly become a resounding no. In fact, it was like a hell no, to the point where I felt like my nervous system was outside my body again. And I can remember thinking, I haven't felt this way since I was in corporate. Holy shit. What is going on in my system? Because it literally felt like my nervous system was on the outside. And as my body likes to do when I'm not listening to the first time it tries to kick me in the ass, it kicks me in the ass harder. And it provides what I like to call the universal 2x4, comes down and gives me a good crack and is like, all right, Candy, you're not going to sit this one out. I'm going to level your ass. And so for the first time in 10 years, I got sick. I thought I had COVID. I didn't. It showed up negative. However, I had symptoms. I was down. I was down for the count for a couple of weeks. It just wiped me out. Which again, going back to that old pattern, or as I used to say, my old friend, and I don't know why I ever called it my friend. I just wrote a blog about this recently. I don't know why I called it my friend, because seriously, I've no friends in my life do I want that can constantly sucker punch me, level me, kick me in the ass, tell me a bunch of bullshit stories, keep telling me I'm not enough, keep trying to hold me back. I mean, seriously, what kind of nonsense do we keep buying into? And so anyway, this showed up again. It showed up again where I was right back in the energy of what I've been spending the last decade clearing. And I say this for a couple reasons. One, I think there's a myth that when, somebody's out there and they're teaching, somebody's out there as an influencer, somebody's out there as a guide to talk about, here are some strategies, here are resources, here are things you can do to bring yourself back. We forget that we still are living a human experience, right? I can tell you, for as evolved as I am, I know nothing. I know absolutely fucking nothing. And I also can tell you that for as much as I've done this work, and I was actually just finishing a book from Shaman Durek called Spirit Hacking. And by the way, if you want to really get into some stuff, woo, what a fucking awesome read. But I love that he's in there, and he offers that we stop calling it inner work in the first place. Because work, think about that word. It's got such a heavy anchoring, kind of like grounding, not in a good way, thing that feels like something's being done to us. I got to work on myself. Okay, we need to stop that bullshit. This idea of I got to keep working on myself. Life has a way of presenting the next layer as you are being and engaged in your life. And for me, I knew coming into this year that I was being asked to step into some bigger places. And as true to me and true to my human form, sometimes there's a little resistance. I don't always want, when the downloads come and they're huge and they fucking tell me I'm supposed to do X, I'm kind of like, yeah, but can I just do Y? That just feels a little bit safer and more comfortable. And the universe is like, girl, you're funny. And literally, I feel like sometimes the universe, God looks at me and says, seriously, Candy, you're fucking hilarious. I need you to stop with this bullshit. And I need you to just go. I need you to do, I need you to be. And so sometimes when that resistance comes up, that universal 2x4 cracks me upside the head and says, all right, Barone, here we go. This summer was one of those things. And so my nervous system was outside again, my system. And I'm like, what's going on? I got sick for the first time. And so it was really clear that I'm like, something's not in alignment for me. I am very quick now that when something shows up in my body, especially a physical pain or something that it brings my energy down, or something that makes me feel like I'm just not really in my body, that it's the opportunity for me to ground. It's the opportunity for me to get still. It's the opportunity for me to gain perspective, to say, all right, something's showing up for me, to teach me, to guide me, to give me a gift. Am I willing to sit with it and see what presents? And so I allowed myself to sit with it. And I had, this was right around Memorial Day, when then I had I decided I wanted get a group of women together, and I wanted us to commune together. And that turned out to be not what I was hoping it would be. I'll leave it at that. I'll do that as another video another time. Um, and I kind of hit rock bottom. I can remember my mom's been living with me for the past year. We're looking to get her a house here in the Austin area. And I had a breakdown. I lost it. I literally just came unglued, and I couldn't stop crying on Memorial Day. It was actually Memorial Day. And I just felt like I don't know. I wanted to throw in the towel. I wanted to say, fuck it. It just felt heavy. It just felt a lot. And through that, I realized the first thing I needed to do was go back to my design. So I've done a lot of work in human design. I do a lot of work with my clients. You're going to hear me bringing a lot more forward, especially around human design and our leadership style and human design, and how we bring abundance and peace and prosperity and fulfillment to us, and what that means for our signature, our authority. And so for me, I was like, let me go back to understanding my energetic blueprint, understanding how I'm wired. And it was crazy because the first thing that showed up for me was, I am here to disrupt. I am here to catalyze. I am here to create something new. And I will feel stuck if I am trying to keep myself in a box, a cage, or somebody else's system or program. Well, no wonder why this collaboration wasn't working for me. I was creating a space that invited back in that very, I would say a bit imbalanced masculine corporate energy that's very rigid, very structured, very, for me, stuck. It's one thing when I can play in it, consult in it, and actually bring some work into that space. It's another when I feel like I'm confined by the edges of the box and I have to show up and play a certain way. As a manifesting generator, I'm a 6-2 manifesting generator. That doesn't work for me. And so my first call to action was, I need to step away from this relationship, from this partnership. And the minute I sent a message saying, I so deeply appreciate this opportunity. It was a hell yes for me at the beginning. It is now a hell no. I need to pull out, and it's just not a space for me, and it's just not aligned. While other people weren't happy with that message, it was very much an integrity for me and very true to what I needed for me to walk in my truth. And the minute that I did that, 2 of my biggest opportunities dropped in my lap, because that's how the universe responds. It's like, I've been trying to bring this to you and you're blocking yourself. And what's interesting is I was supposed to do sort of an experiences event through this collaboration. And I had met up with an old coach of mine, and she's like, where can you go right now? Where can you go to do some just being for you? And immediately what came through was the mountains. And so I called up a friend of mine who's had an open invitation and said, can I come stay with you? And at first I was just going to go for a couple of days. She actually convinced me to stay as long as possible. And so I turned what was going to be a long weekend into 9 full days in Denver, in the mountains, in a space where I could ground myself, in a space where I could be in that healthy masculine energy, in a space where I could disconnect. And so I did. I actually completely unplugged myself from all of my social media. I took it all off my phone. Oh God, June 27th, I took all social media off my phone. I informed all my clients that I was going to take 2 weeks of vacation and I would not be available. I work with some real estate clients who they always say, unless it's flood, blood, or fire, can't get me, right? And so I was very clear, unless it's flood, blood, or fire, and that's, you call 911 anyway, right? So, and everything was just perfectly timed that I had this space. And so I went off the grid. I was offline. I was out of social media, and I had one of the most fulfilling spaces in a really long time. And I thought I was going to do a lot of writing. I'm working on my next book. And that's not what came through. It was a lot of being still. It was a lot of sitting. It was a lot of being outside in nature. It was a lot of walking, and it was a lot of just allowing myself to feel into everything that had kind of shown up, what was presenting and moving. And so I came back and I was like, all right, let's jump back in. You got to get back into it, jump back in. And immediately my body said no, said you need another day. So I took another day. And another day became another day. And then another day turned into a week. And another week turned into another week. And I actually felt myself such at peace every time I woke up and said, what's lighting me up today? What do I want to do? Let's get into the business. And everything said, no, you need more time. This isn't a 9-day sabbatical. You need more time. And what's crazy is I did a leadership retreat in the middle of this. So I was in a sabbatical period and I got to do a leadership retreat. I've had some beautiful things, whether through referral or things drop in, just beautiful, amazing things drop into the work that I do, and work that's expanding. A lot's expanding. Oh, so much has expanded through this last couple of months. But what's interesting is that 9 days, which turned out, it was supposed to be a long weekend, turned into 9 days, has turned into 2 months. And I am just now, as we're coming out of Labor Day weekend, coming back into what's been showing up. And what's crazy about that is, one, I've had my most abundant season I've probably had. And so if I look at the beginning of the first half of this year, and I look at the 2 months that I've been in sabbatical, there has been far greater abundance coming through the 2 months than there was the entire rest of the year. It's crazy how, when we give ourselves permission to simply be, and I love the expression that says sometimes we have to slow down to speed up. I'm going to tell you, sometimes you got to fucking stop. You got to actually hit a full on, hit the brakes, hit the stop, and allow yourself space to ask yourself the big questions. Why am I doing this? Who am I in all of this? What's meaningful for me? We get so caught up. And like I said, it's easy, especially when you've been programmed, you've been wired, and that's been your default. I'm a type A personality. I know that's shocking to most of you. In fact, I'm probably an extreme type A personality. Well, let's just be clear, I am. And I know how to get shit done. I know the GSD has been my mantra through my life. Get shit done, right? I know how to hustle. Yet here's the thing, the hustle is so full of bullshit. It's such a bullshit game we're running. This idea of wind and grind, burn and churn, hustle till you drop, no pain, no gain is bullshit. I don't care if you're a man, you're a woman, I don't care who you are. It's bullshit, and it's not what's calling us right now. It's not what's asking us to step forward. And through, what's crazy is I've been in this space for quite some time where I've talked about, I've been opening the grace, and the grace has been really grace for myself more than anything. But what's been interesting is this journey. I think about the last 4 or 5 years, and I think specifically around this time through the pandemic, and then this sabbatical, this thing that forced itself on me. And I won't even say forced, I don't like the word. It fully presented and gave me the opportunity to allow the invitation for me to step into it. That feels better for me. And so I accepted the invitation, and this sabbatical that I didn't even know I needed, wanted, didn't have time for, has been the greatest gift I've been given to date. And it put me in a place to really get aligned as fuck. And so what I mean about that is, it's allowed me to drop into a deeper space of knowing that I am just because. And what I mean by that is I am all of the things. I am worthy. I am valued. I am of value. I am bringing a higher level consciousness. I am really clear about who I am and what I'm stepping into for the first time. And it was interesting, even as I went out to Denver, I remember saying to my friend, I said, this is the first time. And I mean, I think about the work that I do, but honestly, this has been the first time I haven't been afraid of what's been downloading. I haven't been afraid of what's been presenting, because the picture is really big, and the opportunity to step into a shift in how we're leading, a shift in how we are accessing higher levels of consciousness, a shift into how we get to co-create our reality for what it is moving forward. This is the first time I'm ready to fully embrace it. And so this space has dropped in, this beautiful, delicious space. And it's only been in unplugging, untethering, going dark, getting off the grid, letting myself just say no to everything. And I mean, I've been saying fuck no to everything, so that I could get myself in a place to get aligned, so that I could say fuck yes to the things that really light me up. We have such an opportunity to let go of this bullshit notion of what we think success is. First of all, most of us are not wired for it. If you look at our design, if you look at the energetic blueprint of the majority, we are not here and not wired for achievement, accomplishment, and quote, success. We are here for satisfaction. We are here for fulfillment and something that is meaningful in our lives. And so I am excited because by giving myself this space, by taking the invitation that presented and allowing myself to lean in fully, to stop, to say no to everything so that I could get aligned as fuck, to stand in a place to say, I know what's being asked and how I get to show up and how I get to serve. I'm excited because some really big things are coming through as a result. You're going to see some changes. You're going to see some things being elevated, and you're going to see that I haven't had a whole lot of fucks to give, but I have 0 fucks to give. And you're going to see that I am no longer in any way holding back my voice. And I say that because it's time that we all give ourselves permission to do the same. And it's funny because when I started this work, and my company is called You Empowered Strong, right? It spells yes. And it was all about how to say yes to yourself. And I think about the foundations. Say yes to yourself, and leadership is a choice, right? We get to decide. We have free will. We get to choose. Are we going to honor the energetic blueprint that was created as part of our soul contract when we came into this earth? Or are we going to keep buying into the matrix and the bullshit and the darkness and the programming and the stuff around us? Or are we going to say, look, I wasn't put on this planet at this point right now to be like everybody else. Fuck that shit. I mean, seriously, fuck that shit. And I want you to think about the fact that we are right now being called to step into our fullness. And there are going to be people that is going to rock their boat. You're going to disrupt. They're going to be uncomfortable. And so what? I cannot keep worrying about what everybody else is going to think if I'm going to stand in the truth of what is presenting in order for me to live out my purpose, which, by the way, is not this thing out there. It is you right now in this space to recognize you are purpose. You are your purpose. And when you get aligned as fuck in that space, it's where the magic happens. And I will tell you, I have been out and I've had my most abundant, prosperous season, and it's not stopping. I can see the vision for what's unfolding. And with that means I want to create spaces for us to dance together and play together. I want to create what I want to call these pop-up play spaces, these spaces that virtually and in person, we can come together for one in a way to connect, because we're missing connection so deeply right now, in a way to commune together, in a way to activate together, and in a way for each and every one of us to walk away taking inspired action. And so I say that because stay tuned. There are some things that are moving. And for those of you that are like, hell, I'm in now, then drop a message and we can have a conversation. There's ways to do this now. I'm not waiting. What I want to know is who wants to be on. And I like to think about the analogy of Alice in the Wonderland, right? Through the looking glass. There are rabbit holes that are showing up right now. These quantum leap type rabbit holes that are different portals. And I got to tell you, are fucking magical. They're scary as hell. They're scary as hell. I have no idea what's going to show up along the path. It could be the Mad Hatter. It could be the freaking Cheshire Cat. It could be a whole lot of weird ass characters. I don't know. All I know is that the call is to start jumping down those rabbit holes. It's to start to follow the curiosity. It's to start to play in a space that says what's possible. Because think about that for just a moment. Everything that's happened in the last 2.5 years that we have done differently, that's shown up as a possibility for what we can do because we didn't have a choice. Systems are imploding right and left. Things that we've always believed about education, around business, around our government, around finances, around whatever, is all like gone to hell in a handbasket. I mean, it is literally blown up, and we have done things because we've had to. It's been very reactive. Now imagine if you could play in a space where you were given a blank canvas and you could dance in such a juicy space of playing in the power of possibilities, that you could co-create a whole new reality just by saying, what if? Actually saying, imagine if. Imagine if. Imagine if everything we've ever been told is bullshit, because by the way, it is. Imagine if this isn't even real, because it's not. Imagine if we took all the rules, the paradigms, the boxes, the cages, the bullshit, the containers, the shit, and just said, what if? Or imagine if we built a container with no edges instead. Imagine that for a minute. A container with no edges. We created a universe. We created a space to play. We created a space to literally step into a place where curiosity was the driving factor. Where by simply being and getting regrounded into our bodies, regrounded into Mother Earth and Gaia, regrounded into our own alignment and truth, our own integrity of who we are, just by coming home, we could open up access to infinite possibilities around a new construct, a new reality, not even a construct. Let's break that down. A new reality that's a container with no edges. Like we could expand that far beyond anything we've ever thought was possible simply by getting aligned as fuck. It's that simple. You want the ultimate life hack. Like seriously, the ultimate life hack is just come back home to yourself. You don't need to learn anything else. You don't need to find anything. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need any of it. Actually, you need to like unlearn, untether, let go of, and come back to your due north. Come back to a space that when you are aligned as fuck, you are so dialed in to say, this is my truth no matter what. I am, just because. So I could go on and on and on. Obviously, I'm not passionate about this. I am so fucking fired up and lit right now. I cannot wait to play in this space with you. I cannot wait to see what keeps coming through. I want to know if you're ready, buckle up, let's go. We're going to go take some spaceships down some rabbit holes and we're just going to go take off. I want to know who's in. I want to know who wants to play in this space. And I cannot wait to keep being in this conversation with you. Now is the time. We have an opportunity. There's so much shifting. There's more around human design I want to talk to you about. There's more around the shift of going from this very systemic kind of heavier we energy into a very expansive, individualized, collective energy of intuition and how we get grounded. And oh my God, there's just so much to share with you. And if you want to be on this ride, if you want to be in this energy, if you want to be on, I welcome you, I invite you, and I cannot wait to dance with you. For all of that, I have missed you all. It's good to be back. I feel so awake and alive and fucking lit. It's delicious. So with that, this is Candy. I love you. Mwah, mwah. And I cannot wait to activate some really big, amazing, awesome, fucking delicious things with you. Let's do this.